Money in the Bank is tonight on pay-per-view on the network. They are in Chicago for what has become one of the big, really among the big four. I think Survivor Series long ago was displaced as one of the so-called traditional big four pay-per-views. Money in the Bank took its place, and that show is going to be one of the big shows of the year. Now, before I get into the predictions here, let me just say this, because I'm going to weave in my thoughts on Raw and SmackDown. I really don't have a lot to say about SmackDown, honestly, from this past week. I enjoyed the Daniel Bryan Shelton Benjamin match. There was some good wrestling on the show, but otherwise, not a whole lot to speak of. But this Raw show on Monday night did over 2,400 votes in our Twitter poll. 27% thumbs up, 73% thumbs down. You know, if Raw was a 1 hour show, the way that NXT was, or is, what am I saying was, the way that NXT is, and if that Raw show on Monday night, that hour-long Raw show had opened with that women's fatal four-way and closed the hour out with the men's fatal four-way, and let's say stuffed in the middle you had the Ronda Rousey, Nia Jax stuff, which wasn't great, but at least, it tried to get you interested in seeing the two of them wrestle at Money in the Bank. Or maybe you like the Elias Seth Rollins segment, right? Maybe you put that in the middle, sandwiched between those two four-ways. If that is the way the show was formatted, this would have been a hell of a show. It would have been one of the better hours of WWE television all year. But then you throw in everything else. Then you look at the reality of it. You throw in everything else, you stretch this thing out over 2 more hours, and yikes. This is a tough show to sit through. I'm not going to sit here and rant and rave and yell and scream, because what's the point, right? I mean, I know on the whole 3-hour thing, it's a broken record at this point, but I think it bears mentioning the fact that there isn't, it isn't a case where the entire show is flooded with garbage. There is some good stuff on this show, but it is impossible. I at least find it almost impossible to sit through an entire 3-hour episode of Raw in one sitting. I long ago, to be perfectly honest with you, months ago, reached a point where I simply cannot do that anymore. So I had to find other ways to watch the show piecemeal, watch it over a few days. Thankfully, I'm not in a position where I can or have to review Raw that night or the next night, and I have time to but believe me, I take advantage of the time that I have to go through the entire show, because I simply cannot sit here for 3 hours and watch this show from start to finish. It's just not possible. But Raw's kind of like taking an HD photo, right, with your camera. A beautiful photo, the best photo. But you think the photo is too small, right? You look at it on the computer and this photo just doesn't look big enough. So what do? You go into Photoshop. You try to stretch the dimensions. You try to stretch the photo. Now it looks like shit. That's Raw. The photo was fine the way it was. But no, you just had to go ahead and stretch it out. And now it looks like garbage. And that's one of many analogies that you could come up with, I think, these days to describe Monday Night Raw. If you fish, you will find good stuff on this show. But I cannot sit here and tell you that Monday Night Raw as a 3-hour show as it exists is a good television show. It's not. It's actually quite horrendous. But there was some good stuff on that show Monday night. By the way, I called Constable Corbin last week. I referred to him as follically challenged on last week's podcast. So what happens? He goes and shaves his head. Baron Corbin has shaved his head. The skullet, or whatever the hell it was he had going there, is now gone. I say good for him. He looks like something out of American History X now. But this was long overdue, so I applaud the Constable for finally making the change. Now let's get into these Money in the Bank predictions. Let's not waste any more time here. We have the Tag Team Championships, the SmackDown Tag Team titles on the line. The Bludgeon Brothers defending against the Good Brothers, Anderson and Gallows, who have been getting more TV time in recent weeks. I assume only as a way to kind of build them up to lose here in this match, so I don't see there being a title change. Matt Hardy and Bray Wyatt will defend their Raw Tag Team titles against the B Team, Curtis Axel and Bo Dallas. Again, I've enjoyed some of the B Team's antics over the weeks and their over-the-top celebrations, but I don't see any need to change the tag team titles right now. I think Hardy and Wyatt, they've got a good thing going, and I don't know. I don't really see the need to do a title change to Axel and Dallas. So I think that Hardy and Wyatt retain. We have Sami Zayn taking on Bobby Lashley. And this is one of the you heard that sigh, right? Everything I said a minute ago about Raw. Well, these two have a lot to do with how bad these shows have been. And again, it's not their fault. I don't want to lay the blame on them. They're not the ones coming up with creative. They're not the ones coming up with, hey, I got a good idea. Let's have Sami Zayn come out and talk about Bobby Lashley's Instagram. And let's have Sami Zayn come out and talk about how Bobby Lashley wasn't really a soldier. And we'll have the two of them come out and do an obstacle course. And we'll have the two of them come out. All of this horse crap. And all I can say is, as talented as Sami Zayn is, and disappointing as Lashley has been since he's come back. I know the guy has talent, but boy, has he been a disappointment since he came back. I cannot wait for this feud to be over. I am hoping this is a one-off. This is not a drawn-out, hey, let's have 5 rematches kind of program. Let this be it. Let both these guys move on to something else when this is over, please. Just two talented guys who were given next to nothing to work with creatively. And like I said, Lashley has, and this is, also a big part of it is his own fault. He has shown me nothing since he has come back. Now, they haven't exactly given him something to sink his teeth into, but I've really seen nothing from this guy since he came back from Impact. He at least had some personality when I saw him there. He was the champion. He was a heel. He has a little entourage with him. I don't know what the winning formula is for Lashley, but obviously it's not what they're doing with him right now. Now, the segments on TV with these two have been among the worst things on TV all year. I will say this, the military obstacle course nonsense on Monday night, where Zayn, he basically came out and said, look, I still don't believe that Bobby Lashley ever served, and so he put together this obstacle course for him to prove himself, which Lashley came out and was happy to complete. As predictable as this was, with Zayn attacking Lashley finished the whole thing in like 45 seconds. I wish this whole segment was 45 seconds, but as predictable as it was for Zayn to attack him when it was over like he did, the best part of this and one of the best things on the entire show was after Sami laid out Lashley, he took a little swing on the rope. Because one of the things that Lashley had to do was climb the rope like you would in gym class. Well, Sami took the rope like Tarzan and was swinging back and forth. And that... He only swung back and forth about once or twice, but that was funny. I will say that was funny. It doesn't redeem the other 3 weeks of garbage that we had to sit through, but I laughed when he did that. That being said, I don't see Sami Zayn coming out of this the winner. I think Bobby Lashley picks up the win, and hopefully these two move on to something else. Speaking of hoping that two men move on to something else, Roman Reigns goes one-on-one with Jinder Mahal. I don't care about this match. This isn't hate on Roman Reigns. This is, if anything, it's probably more Jinder than Reigns, but there are just certain combinations of guys that don't do anything for you from an entertainment perspective. I don't find anything entertaining about this feud. I don't find anything entertaining about, Jinder Mahal when he comes out on TV. And I just don't care. I cannot bring myself to care about this match. Now, maybe they go out there and they actually impress me, and maybe the bar is so low that I'm like, wow, that was actually a really well laid out match. But I just cannot bring myself to care. I don't see any outcome here other than Roman Reigns winning, especially if they are still setting him up to challenge for the Universal title, which it sounds like they are. So I'm picking Roman. And hopefully this is the one and only time that we have to sit through Roman Reigns against Jinder Mahal. Daniel Bryan goes one-on-one with Big Cass in a rematch from Backlash. Shin bone to the dome when your mama ain't home. Did you notice that when they showed the Bryan promo on SmackDown Tuesday, unless I missed something, I don't recall them playing that part of it. I think they cut the best part of the promo out. I mean, they showed how intense he was at the end there, looking into the camera. That was good, but they didn't air the first half of it, which was kind of the whole point. So I was disappointed to see that. But I've kind of waffled back and forth on what I think is going to happen here. If it's up to me, Daniel Bryan wins, and they kind of move him up to a higher tiered opponent. I look at Big Cass, and he just has this. I don't know. He has this look in his eyes, this kind of dead look about him. There's just not a whole lot going on there. But they're trying to make the guy, he's big, so they figure, hey, we gotta do something with this guy because he's big. And so he lost clean in the first match. I tend to think that they're going to go 50-50 on this, and Cass is going to pick up the win here. So I'm going with Big Cass as my pick, which is bad because that means that this feud is not over. Asuka challenges Carmella for the SmackDown Women's Championship. There was a report on PW Insider this week that James Ellsworth is on his way back to WWE. No word on what his role will be. He may have absolutely nothing at all to do with Carmella. This is just a guess on my part. It would make sense to me, though, for him to make a surprise appearance during this match. Maybe he provides the distraction, helps Carmella retain her championship, because that is the only way I see Carmella keeping that title. She's going to need some help. She's going to need some kind of distraction. And it just doesn't, to me, it just doesn't feel like it's time for Asuka to get the championship. Not that I wouldn't like to see her with it. It just doesn't feel like it's the time that they're going to make that move. I don't think they're taking it off Carmella yet. But in no way should she be defeating Asuka straight up cleanly on her own. I say Ellsworth with the assist helps Carmella retain. Seth Rollins defends his Intercontinental Championship against Jacked Seth Rollins, or Elias, as all of the laymen's call him. This is the biggest match, I think, yet of Elias' career, getting, I want to say this is his first championship match, certainly his first championship match on a pay-per-view. Very curious to see how he performs here. Elias, to me, in the ring is very hit or miss. I'm thoroughly entertained by him, his whole shtick, his act, his promos. In the ring, he could have, a really good match depending on who he's in there with, or he can have a really boring match. Rollins, with him in there, I tend to think they're going to go out there and have a good match. We'll see. It's a big test for Elias. I don't see him winning. I think Seth should retain. I think he will retain. We have last man standing for the WWE Championship. AJ Styles defending against Nutcracker Nakamura. Again, a match I've waffled on. What do I think is going to happen here? As much as I love heel Nakamura, and I'd love to see him get a shot with that title, I just don't think it's going to happen. I think AJ's going to win, and I think AJ is going to go to SummerSlam ultimately and defend the championship. Maybe he'll drop it there. I don't see them doing a title change. I could be completely wrong. Again, I'm not 100% convinced of anything on this match, but I'm going to go with AJ. I think AJ retains. Speaking of AJ, another reason I don't see him dropping the title tonight is because this Monday, tomorrow night, actually tomorrow morning, I believe, is when the official announcement is going to be made that AJ Styles is going to be the cover boy for WWE 2K19. Pro Wrestling Sheet broke the news that AJ will be on the cover. Ronda Rousey will be this year's pre-order bonus character. And apparently Rey Mysterio is slated to be the surprise legend, or at least one of the surprise legends in the game. I suppose there could always be another surprise that we're not aware of. But he was seen filming for the 2K19 commercial, so he will be in the game. We have the Women's Money in the Bank ladder match featuring Charlotte, Becky Lynch, Naomi, Lana, Alexa Bliss, Ember Moon, Natalya, and Sasha Banks. I really enjoyed the Fatal 4-Way that opened up the show last Monday. Natty beat Sasha, Ember, and Alexa. I thought they had two Fatal 4-Ways on the show, one with the men, one with the women. I thought both of them were very good. The women's one was the best thing, though, on the show. Bayley, had a note here just to mention Bayley quickly. Bayley is not in the Money in the Bank match, as I'm sure many of you are aware. And she did not have her best showing on Monday night in that match with Ruby Riott. There was a dreadful looking drop kick spot that it made me cringe so hard I almost convulsed. Riott Squad was outside the ring, and so Bayley briefly channeled her inner Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn does that spot where he dives through the turnbuckles outside, which is not an easy spot to do. It's always fun to watch him pull it off. But he dives through the turnbuckles, comes out on the other side, and hits a tornado DDT. We've seen him do it 1,000 times. Well, Bayley tried something similar, only she went for a drop kick through the turnbuckles, which actually sounds harder to do. And so what she was trying to do was drop kick the Riott Squad through the turnbuckles, and they'd all fall down. I think that was the idea. Well, she went for a drop kick. Unfortunately, she fell short. And for some odd reason, Sarah Logan, who was actually standing nowhere near Bayley, even if she would have hit the drop kick, Sarah Logan sees this and grabs her own head, like she suddenly had a migraine or something. Or perhaps she just realized what the rest of us can already see, which is that Bayley is deader than dead on this brand. She is the human version of The Walking Dead at this point. Just so much momentum, so much fanfare early on, only to flame out in very depressing fashion. And by the way, I still watch The Walking Dead. I watch Fear the Walking Dead as well, but I watch The Walking Dead still, for a little while longer. I don't know for how much longer. It is a far cry from what it once was, but everybody seems to love piling on the show. Everyone's turning on the show lately. And it makes me think of Bayley. And I'm not even sure, honestly, if a heel turn would work, what that would do for her. I have no idea if she could pull it off. I don't even know if she has it in her. I didn't know if Sami Zayn had it in him to be a really good heel, and he knocked it out of the park when he first turned. So there's always that chance that just by making that little change, Bayley could turn into almost a completely different character and have a new lease on life. But something has to change with this woman soon, because right now she is just drowning out there. Absolutely drowning. As far as the Money in the Bank match goes, a lot of divided opinion on this. I'm going to stick with my pick. She's been my pick for a few weeks now. I can kind of see what I think is the story they're trying to tell long-term on that Raw brand, and I think it's going to play into this. And the injury, they've really been playing up the knee injury for Natty the last few weeks. I think Natty is faking, is what I think. I think she is faking that knee injury. Matthew from Botchamania had the clip he put on Twitter. There, if you watched on Monday, I think during the match, she had a wrap on her... It was on the wrong knee. So she had a wrap on her left knee when they went backstage and they showed her on crutches. And maybe this was a few weeks ago, but there was a wrap on a completely different knee. It was on the wrong knee, and everyone's bashing WWE. Oh, quality control. Does anybody pay attention to this kind of stuff? First of all, the answer is A, no. And B, I really want to believe that it's less a case of WWE not paying attention and not caring, and more a situation where, hey, this was done on purpose. Almost like a little Easter egg that'll make sense later on. But I think Natty is faking. I don't know that she will reveal that here, although it's going to be hard for somebody with one leg to climb a ladder and win. I guess she can do it with a pained expression on her face. But I do think she's going to win Money in the Bank. I'm not the biggest fan of Natalya right now. I don't really particularly find her exciting. But I think the most interesting thing you could do with her is to reveal that she was faking this injury, and to have her kind of go back to what she was doing before. She used to be the heel on SmackDown. She came to Raw. She's been a babyface. She's been all buddy-buddy, lovey-dovey with Ronda Rousey. Anybody who's watched wrestling for any length of time, I would think, would probably recognize that as a red flag, a neon sign that trouble is coming. But I think she's faking. I think she's going to win. And that then leads us, I'll get back to Natty in a second, because that then leads us to the Raw Women's Championship match. Nia Jax defending her title against Rowdy Ronda Rousey. Let me just give a shout out here to Chris Van Vliet. He did a fun interview on his YouTube channel with Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair together. And in that interview, Ric Flair claimed that Ronda only signed a one-year deal with WWE. Reason being, she wants to have kids. And that is something that Ronda has stated publicly. That is not, any great surprise, that she would like to start a family in the not-too-distant future. Now, in The Observer this week, Meltzer says that it is not a one-year deal. It is a multi-year deal, which is something that was very important when it came to their TV negotiations. Flair has made comments before, sort of out of turn, or he'll almost like, I may get in trouble for saying this, but, and then he goes and says stuff where I'm sure the company would rather he not. I'm sure his daughter in some cases would rather he not disclose. This could be one of those things, especially if it's wrong. I mean, if he's just flat out wrong and Ronda signed a 2, 3, 4-year deal, I'm sure that's something WWE doesn't want people thinking, that she only has a 1-year contract. But he's Ric Flair. What are they going to do to him? You know what I mean? Are they going to job him out to Repo Man? It's not 1992 anymore, sadly. They can't do anything to him. So he's pretty much Teflon at this point. Surprisingly, on Raw last Monday, they had Ronda prove already that she can put the armbar on Nia Jax and tap her out. I thought that was the story going into this pay-per-view. Nia was taunting her and saying, you can't put me in the armbar, you can't get me to tap out. So then here we are 6 days before the pay-per-view, and not only did Ronda Rousey put her in the armbar, but she tapped her out. And that, to me, seemed like a dead giveaway that there's going to be a different finish for the match itself, because why give it away, 6 days beforehand? Why not just wait and have her tap Nia out on Sunday, unless you're not going to have Ronda tap out Nia Jax. Now, I think that Natty is going to win Money in the Bank earlier in the night. And I think she's going to come out, possibly not even when the match is over necessarily, possibly when the match is still in progress, and show that she was faking her knee injury for all of these weeks. She's going to cash in, and she's going to win the championship in a swerve. Now, again, it could be after the match. It could be during. I mean, I tend to think it'll happen mid-match, very similar to how Seth Rollins cashed in at WrestleMania 31, turned into a triple threat. He won the title. So that way, Ronda can lose without actually being pinned. If they don't want to pin Ronda Rousey in her first singles match, they don't have to. But if they also don't want to put the title on her just yet, then that, to me, would seem like the best scenario. Now, I'm torn because I know Ronda is going into the UFC Hall of Fame next month. Part of me thinks they want her to be the champion when she goes in. But then I think about it, I'm like, well, what is she going to do? I mean, is she going to wear the title on stage for the induction? Like, that would be ridiculous. So what difference does it make whether she's the champion or not? So I'm going to stick with my original prediction, which is that Natty wins Money in the Bank. She cashes in here. And all of that Natty is my best friend nonsense with Ronda is just one giant swerve that leads to a match between them, and Ronda could win the title off her possibly as early as SummerSlam. Finally, we have the men's Money in the Bank ladder match. Braun Strowman, Kevin Owens, Bobby Roode, Finn Balor, The Miz, Rusev, Samoa Joe, and one of the 3 New Day members. I know a lot of people are saying Big E. I thought it was going to be Big E early on. The more I think about this, I really do think it's probably going to be Kofi or Xavier Woods, and I guess in a few hours we'll know if I look like a fool for saying that. I'm going to go ahead and say Kofi Kingston gets the spot in the match as the member of New Day. So, pretty good lineup. Nice little group of talent there. The Fatal 4-Way on Monday night had Strowman, Balor, Owens, and Rude. Much like the women's 4-Way, I thought it was really good. Kevin Owens, the whole spot doing the frog splash from the top of the ladder onto Strowman through the announce table was very cool, even though, 8 seconds later they cut to commercial. But looking at that match and looking at what they've done now for several weeks, they've done all they can do to keep Braun Strowman, I think, as strong as humanly possible going into Money in the Bank, which you have to, especially if he's not winning. And I don't believe he is. It's almost too obvious that they want everybody to think that Strowman is winning and winning and winning. He's unstoppable. Nobody can stop this man. And they almost just want you to think that there's no way anybody else can win this match. I kind of hate it when they telegraph things like that, but and not even really, it's not even really fair to say that here. I mean, they really haven't been doing anything wrong. They're keeping Braun strong. He's the monster. He shouldn't be losing. I hate it more when the announcers telegraph things in the middle of a match. That I hate. And that is that's been a WWE problem now for 25 years. Going back to when Vince McMahon himself was still on commentary. It's just, for whatever reason, they always think, we have to lead people to think that we're going this way when in actuality we're going that way. But because they did it for so long, if you watch any WWE pay-per-view main event, I mean, you can pinpoint the exact moment where the announcers give away the finish. It'll be like the color guy, like a Corey Graves or a Booker T or somebody going, here he goes, he's going to win the title. Or even Michael Cole, he's going to win the championship, it's over, and of course, it's a dead giveaway that it's not. So it's one of those things that's kind of annoying. Who do I think is going to win? I got to stick with my original pick. I can't stray. I made this pick in January when I did the prediction podcast. I was bang on last year. I picked Baron Corbin to win Money in the Bank, and he did, even though that cash-in was quite the catastrophe for him. In January, I said that The Miz was my pick to win Money in the Bank. The Miz has had this sort of resurrection of himself now. where he's turned into quite the valuable, I think, performer and asset for this company. And the idea of him having another run as the world champion is not something I am as against as I used to be. And with Daniel Bryan being back and Miz being on the SmackDown brand with him, I think there's a natural story there to tell. You don't need the title, but I think it works better if you do have the championship. And if Bryan is going to win the belt, if he is at some point, wouldn't it be satisfying to see him, beat the Miz and have Miz be the person that he beats to become the, WWE champion? So I think Miz is going to win. And as far as when he may cash in, I mean, I already pitched one cash in on the show. I don't know that they are going to do two on the same show. It doesn't have to be tonight. So I don't know when Miz would cash in, but I do think Miz wins, and I do think he will successfully cash in, whatever that may be. And the natural direction going into WrestleMania next year would be and should be Daniel Bryan working his way up to the Miz and ultimately unseating the Miz to win the championship back. Championship, by the way, that he never lost. Much like Finn Balor. Never actually lost the Universal title. So those are my Money in the Bank picks. Not a bad lineup. There is some dead weight on this card, but the latter matches should be pretty good. The last man standing match, AJ and Nakamura, I think their last few matches have been better than the first batch. I suspect that they're going to go out there and have a really good match as well. And we'll see if they have any tricks up their sleeve, any swerves and surprises. But it should be a good show.